Hey guys, so before I intro this video, just a quick heads up. I posted an exclusive video on Patreon today. It's very important. In fact, it's the single most important video I've ever made. I'm not joking, this is not hyperbole, and I'm not trying to bait you into signing up to Patreon. But I can't post it here on YouTube. I'll get instantly banned, and that's kind of the point of the whole damn video. This madness needs to stop now. If you're a member, watch it. Clock's in at about half an hour. If you're not a member and you're curious, you can sign up to Patreon with the card in the corner or the link at the pinned comment. I don't need your money and you don't have to watch the video, but I have no choice but to post it privately. That video goes up on YouTube. Goodbye solving the money problem. Not worth the risk. Now that said, in today's video, I'm going to be reacting in real time to a segment from the All-In podcast, which many of you watch, I'm sure, specifically regarding Elon Musk's complete and utter assassination of a BBC NPC. The discussion includes the false narratives propagated by the mainstream media. You may even go as far as to describe said narratives as the one true narrative. How media manipulates the minds of NPCs and why it's so important to think for yourself. As I'm sure many of you do, when an All-In podcast drops, I listen. Today, however, I had a funny feeling Elon Musk's appearance with the BBC NPC may be discussed, and to my delight, upon opening this video and doing a quick search in the transcript, and by the way, pro tip, if you're ever curious if a specific topic came up, here's how to find it. On a YouTube video, all you need to do is click the three dots, show transcript, and search. So I searched BBC and surprise, prize. Oh, by the way, Andrew Human, legend, go watch all his videos. Highly recommended. I see the word BBC and I thought, hey, let's watch this in real time together and I might share a few thoughts and comments along the way. I'm never going to tire of watching this BBC NPC get absolutely annihilated in real time. So let's hope this delivers the goods. I'll rewind a few seconds.
I think it was most evident in the way that Elon dismantled and manhandled the BBC reporter.
Oh my God, that was brutal.
This is a small microcosm of what I think media is. So
we have spoken to people who have been sacked that used to be in content moderation, and we've spoken to people very recently who were involved in moderation, and they just say there's not enough people to police this stuff, particularly around hate speech in the company. Is that
what hate speech are you talking about? I mean, you use Twitter,
right?
Do you see a rise in hate speech?
I mean,
but just a personal anecdote. Like, what do you? I don't.
Personally, for you, I would see I get more of that kind of content. Yeah, personally, but I'm not going to talk to the rest of for the rest of Twitter.
So you see more hate speech personally?
I would say I would see more hateful content in that.
Content you don't like or hateful? What do you mean to describe a hateful thing?
Yeah, I mean, just content that will solicit a reaction, something that may include something that is slightly racist or slightly sexist, those kinds of things.
So you think if something is slightly sexist, it should be banned?
No,
is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying anything. I'm saying.
Well, I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content, and I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
you
don't.
Can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But you
said
actually,
a lot of people are quite similar. I only look at
hang on a second. You said you've seen more
feed.
hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks. And
then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen for you hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying
I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
Yes, because you can't give me a single example of hateful content, not even one tweet, and yet you claimed that the hateful content was high.
Well,
that's false.
No, what I claimed.
You just lied.
What I claimed was. There are many organizations that say that kind of information is on the rise. Now, whether it has on my feed or not, I mean, right, and
literally
if you look at something
one.
Like the Strategic Dialogue Institute in the UK, they will say that. So
look, people will say all sorts of nonsense. I'm literally asking for a single example, and you can't name one.
Right, and as I've already said, I don't use that feed. But
then how would you know that?
I don't think this is getting anywhere.
You literally said you experienced more hateful content, and then couldn't name a single example.
Right, and as I said,
that's absurd.
I haven't actually looked at that feed.
Then how would you know there's hateful content?
Because I'm saying that's what I saw a few weeks ago. I can't give you an exact example. Let's move on. We only have a certain amount of time.
Wow.
COVID misinformation. You changed the COVID misinformation
Has
rules.
BBC changed its COVID misinformation?
The BBC does not set the rules on Twitter, so I'm asking you.
No, I'm talking about the BBC's misinformation about COVID.
I'm literally asking you about, you changed the labels, the COVID misinformation labels. There used to be a policy, it then disappeared. Why do that?
Well, COVID is no longer an issue. Does the BBC hold itself at all responsible for misinformation regarding masking and side effects of vaccinations? And not reporting on that at all? And what about the fact that the BBC was put under pressure by the British government to change its editorial policy? Are you aware of that?
This is not an interview about the BBC.
Oh, you thought it wasn't?
I see now why you've done Twitter Spaces. I am not a representative of the BBC's editorial policy. I want to make that clear. Let's talk about something else. You want to talk about the BBC?
You too.
All right, let's talk about something else.
You weren't expecting that.
Let's talk about something else.
I used to think that media had an agenda. I actually now think that they don't particularly have an agenda other than to be relevant because they see waning relevance. And so I think what happens is whenever there are a bunch of articles that tilt the pendulum into a narrative, they all of a sudden become very focused on refuting that narrative. And even if it means they have to lie, they'll do it, right? So, I think for months and months, I think people have seen that the quality of the discourse on Twitter became better and better. Elon was doing a lot with bots and all of this stuff, cleaning it up. And this guy had to try to establish the counter narrative and was willing to lie in order to do it, then he was dismantled. Here, you guys, I don't have a bone to pick so much with San Francisco. I think I've been relatively silent on this topic, but you guys as residents and former residents, I think have a vested interest in the quality of that city, and you guys have been very vocal.
Just to quickly jump in here, you may have noticed that I occasionally refer to San Francisco accurately as San Francisco. The reason I do this isn't to poke the bear, but to illustrate. This city is a burning fucking dumpster fire right now. And people are being lied to and misled, particularly by those in power, the leaders of the city. I have visited San Francisco multiple times. To see the change between 2014 and 2021, I could not believe my fucking eyes. And for the record, in 2014, I stayed in the Mission District itself. I've seen the worst of the worst. And bro, what has happened to this city is an absolute abomination. For some strange reason, there's a lot of people in the San Francisco hive mind who are unwilling or just unaware of how bad the city has become. It is dangerous, it is unsafe, it is filthy, it is disgusting. It is no exaggeration to say that walking in many parts of San Francisco City, you are guaranteed to be dodging human fecal matter, stepping over syringes, watching people shoot up drugs in public. There's a chance you may be physically assaulted by somebody who's mentally ill, and many homeless in the United States. And truth be told, the vast majority of people who are homeless, at least long term, are mentally ill and or drug addicts. Not a diss, just an observation. Are aware that they can live the high life in San Francisco. The homeless problem is a mental health problem. A once great city is burning in real time. People don't want to talk about it. I will.
I think that you're not the only ones. Michelle Tandler, Schellenberger, there's a bunch of smart, thoughtful people who've been beating this drum, Gary Tan. And so now I think reporters don't want to write the N+1 article saying that San Francisco is a hellscape. So they have to take the other side. And so now they're going to go and kick up the counter narrative, and they'll probably dismantle the truth and kind of redirect it in order to do it. So I think that what you're seeing is they'll initially tell a story, but when then there's too much of the truth, they'll go to the other side because that's the only way to get clicks and be seen. So I think that that's what you guys are a part of right now.
There's definitely truth in what Chamath has said. In fact, I recall myself saying words to the effect of the mainstream media are taking their last, their final, their dying breaths. They're desperate and currently are acting out of desperation. This is why you see such insanity like NPR boycotting Twitter after Elon Musk sought to accurately label the fact that they are publicly funded. In fact, just to prove the point of their hypocrisy, we're currently on the NPR YouTube channel Let's click any video we like. We might notice something. NPR is an American public broadcast service. You see that little label above the video title? This is exactly the same thing that Elon wanted to do on Twitter. NPR themselves on their own website describe their public funding as both essential and critical to their existence. Their words, not mine. Upon Elon Musk deciding to accurately label NPR, just like YouTube does and has been doing for years, and it's not just NPR, it's everybody who takes public funding and is a media outlet, just to let people know in the interest of transparency, NPR have decided to boycott Twitter. Is this a little bit hypocritical? Spoiler alert, it's nothing but hypocritical. They're totally fine with YouTube, who's been doing this for years, but suddenly not fine if Elon wants to do the same on Twitter. Now, why would that be? Spoiler alert, Elon bad. To Chamath's point, praising Elon Musk will not get the clicks. Demonizing Elon Musk will get the clicks. And since Elon bad, publicly boycotting Twitter is a great way to signal that you agree that Elon bad. It is absolutely fucking pathetic and hypocritical, and being widely misunderstood by a lot of P-brains out there, I'm not gonna lie. By the way, I don't have anything personal against P-brains, but I will call them out. Back to the All-In pod.
They are in the business of protecting the narrative, but I do think there's a huge ideological component to the narrative, both in the Elon case where they're trying to claim that there was a huge rise in hate speech on Twitter. The reason they're saying that is because they want Twitter to engage in more censorship. That's the ideological agenda. Here, the agenda is this radical agenda of decarceration. They actually believe that more and more people should be let out of prison. And so therefore, they have an incentive to deny the existence of crime in San Francisco and the rise in crime in San Francisco. If you poll most people in San Francisco, large majorities of San Francisco believe that crime is on the rise because they can see it, they hear it. And what I would say is, look, I think there's a pyramid of activity, a pyramid of criminal or antisocial behavior in San Francisco that we can all see.
Anyone want to take any guesses as to what might comprise this pyramid? I'll give you a few hints. If you need some new clothes in San Francisco, or some medication, you can either go into a store, pick up said items and pay for them, or you can go into a store, pick up said items and just walk right the f*** out. Untouched, unchallenged. I'm not kidding. And this comes down to the defund the police, too many people are incarcerated bullshit narrative. Remember, actions have consequences. Reducing your police force, having a literal policy of catch and release. Well, as long as you don't steal more than $1,000 worth of stuff, we won't prosecute you. Oh, and it's totally okay to be shooting up heroin and fentanyl in public. In fact, we'll even give you some clean syringes. Who would have thought such policies would create such an absolute dumpster fire of a city? No one could have seen that coming. So now let's just deny that it's even happening. This is how the fake news works.
The base level is you've got a level of chaos on the streets where you have open air drug markets, people doing drugs. Sometimes you'll see, a person doing something disgusting, like people defecating on the streets or even worse. Then there's like a level up where they're chasing after you or, harassing you. People have experienced that. I've experienced that. Then there's a level up where there's petty crime. Your car gets broken into or something like that. Then there's the level where you get mugged. And then finally, the top of the pyramid is that there's a murder. And it's true that most of the time, the issues don't go all the way to the top of the pyramid where someone is murdered. Okay. But that doesn't mean there's not a vast pyramid underneath that of basically quality of life issues. And I think this term quality of life was originally used as some sort of way to minimize the behavior that was going on, saying that they weren't really crimes. We shouldn't worry about them. But if anything, what we've seen in San Francisco is that when you ignore quality of life crimes, you will actually see a huge diminishment in what it's like to live in these cities. Like quality of life is real. And that's the issue. And I think what they're trying to do now is that say that because Bob Lee wasn't the case that we thought it was, that whole pyramid doesn't exist. That pyramid exists. We can all experience it.
Oh my God. I mean, and that's the insincerity of this.
It is insincere. And the existence of that pyramid that we can see and hear and feel and experience every day is why we're willing to make a bet. We called it a bet that the Bob Lee case was like the Brianna Kupfer case. And in that
with a disclaimer. Yes. And we always do a disclaimer here. And just to George Hammond from the Financial Times, who emailed me, here's what he asked me. There's a lot of public attention lately on whether San Francisco status as one of the top business and technology hubs in the U.S. is at risk in the aftermath of the pandemic. Duh.
No fucking shit, Sherlock. Anyone with half a brain whose roots aren't too deep in San Francisco is getting the fuck out of the city. It's not just San Francisco, but California more widely. I recall a very amusing exchange on Twitter a couple of years ago when I pointed out the exodus from California to elsewhere and was challenged by a California resident that there was no such exodus. Upon pointing out some data and facts, tumbleweeds. Why would any business with any sense whatsoever want to have an office in a city in which their employees, walking to and from the office, may be in danger? And if not in danger, will be exposed to some of the absolutely disgusting activity occurring out in public. As Sachs points out, people taking a shit on the sidewalk. This happens, and worse, in public, and no one's doing anything about it. And much of the media is trying to pretend it doesn't happen. Why? Just for those who are unaware, by the way, they're discussing a recent murder that occurred in San Francisco. A tech CEO stabbed to death.
Obviously it is. I wondered if you had a moment to chat about that and whether there is a danger that negative perceptions about the city will damage its reputation for founders and capital allocators in the future. So essentially, and it says obviously a lot of potential for hysteria in this conversation, which I'm keen to avoid. And it's like, hey, have you walked down the street? And I asked him, have you walked down the street in San Francisco?
Jason, the best response is send him the thing that Sachs sent, which is the amount of available office space in San Francisco. People are voting. Companies are voting with their feet. So it's already, if the quality of life wasn't so poor, they'd stay.
This is the essence of gaslighting, is what they do is the people who've actually created the situation in San Francisco with their policies of defunding the police, making it harder for the police to do their job, decriminalizing theft under $950, allowing open air drug markets. The people who have now created that matrix of policies that have created the situation, what they then turn around and do is say, no, the people who are creating the problem are the ones who are observing this. That's all we're doing is observing and complaining about it. And what they try to do is say, well, no, you're running down San Francisco. We're not the ones creating the problem. We're observing it.
How highly relevant. I wasn't expecting this after all. I haven't seen the clip, but here's an interesting thing that occurred on Twitter this very week relating to this very subject and this very act that David just described. Somebody shared this with me on Twitter. A tweet from Dean Preston. Who is Dean Preston? SF, as in San Francisco, D5, as in District 5, I believe. Supervisor, Democratic Socialist, tenant attorney, blah, blah, blah. Let's read his tweet, which includes a comment from me in response to a tweet from none other than Jay Cal, who is currently hosting the All-In podcast. These haters really detest the people of San Francisco. Here's one with 186,000 followers calling San Francisco voters incompetent lunatics. Literally exactly what David Sachs just described. I'm observing what's going on. And somebody responsible for these insane policies, or trying to pretend that these insane policies have not created San Francisco in its current form, suggests that I'm hating on the city, and I, in fact, hate San Francisco voters. My exact tweet, which, by the way, Jason's tweet in response, I'm not sure if it's cut off. Oh, here we go. Jason, we can't even keep Whole Foods in San Francisco. Vote all these incompetent lunatics out of office. And he tagged a few incompetent lunatics. So, my use of the term incompetent lunatics is in context. I responded, asking the incompetent lunatics who voted incompetent lunatics into power to vote incompetent lunatics out of office is a big ask. Now, why would I say this? Geez, let's think about this for a moment. What's going to happen if you defund police? What's going to happen if you're no longer prosecuting shoplifting, theft, as long as it's a little bit under $1,000? What's going to happen if you allow people to shoot up drugs in public? This is a perfect example of exactly what David Sachs is saying here. I'm just observing what's going on in the city. But apparently I hate people in San Francisco. I did respond to this. I have many friends in San Francisco, some wonderful people. Some of them are even among the incompetent lunatics who voted these incompetent lunatics into power. Calling a spade, as in observing, does not mean I hate the spade. Couldn't have made this up.
Point is that the mayor's office said that they were short more than 500 police officers in San Francisco.
Yeah, nobody who's going to become a police officer here? Are you crazy?
Right. Well, and there was another article just this week about how there's a lot of speculation, rumors are swirling of an unofficial strike, an informal strike by police officers who are normally on the force, who are tired of risking life and limb. And then, they basically risk getting in a physical altercation with a homeless person. They bring them in and then they're just released again. So there's a lot of quiet quitting that's going on in the job. It's like this learned helplessness because why take a risk? And then the police commission doesn't have your back. It seems like the only time you have prosecutory zeal by a lot of these prosecutors is when they can go after a cop, not one of these repeat offenders. And you just saw that, by the way, in LA.
Oh, look, Motherboard and New York Times just emailed and DM'd me.
And then did you guys say that instead of solving these issues, the Board of Supervisors was dealing with a wild parrot? What was it? What was it in the group?
The meeting that was disbanded.
They had scheduled a meeting to vote
my
on
Lord.
whether the wild parrots are the official animal of the city of San Francisco. So that was the scheduled meeting that got disbanded.
Also, may I just clarify what Chamath's talking about with the Elon interview? A BBC reporter interviewed Elon and said there is much more race and hate speech in the feeds on Twitter. And he said, can you give me an example? And he said, well, I don't have an example, but people are saying this. He said, which people are saying it? And the BBC reporter said, well, just different groups of people are saying it. And, I've certainly seen it. He said, okay, you saw it and For You? He goes, no, I stopped looking at For You. He said, so give me one example of hate speech that you've seen in your feed. Now, without speaking about any inside information, which I do not have much of, they've been pretty deliberate of removing hate speech from places like For You. And, it's a very complicated issue when you have an open platform, but people may say a word, but it doesn't reach a lot of people. So if you were to say something really nasty, it doesn't take a genius to block that and not have it reach a bunch of people. This reporter kept insisting to Elon that this was on the rise with no factual basis for it, that other people said it. And then he said, but I don't look at the feed. He said, so you're telling me that there's more hate speech that you've seen, but you just admitted to me that you haven't looked at the For You feed in 3 months. And it was just like this completely weird thing. I just had motherboard.
He caught him in a lie. He caught him in a lie. And this is the thing. If you're a journalist, just cut it down the middle. Come prepared with facts.
Look, listen,
and stop taking a position either way.
I want to connect one dot.
Please.
Which is that he filled in his own narrative, even though the data wasn't necessarily there. In the same way that, we kind of filled in our narrative about San Francisco with the Bob Lee, murder being another example.
No, we put a disclaimer on it. Immediately put a disclaimer on it.
Hold on a second. We said what we knew and what we didn't know. And furthermore, we're taking great pains this week to correct the record and explain what we now know.
Yeah.
That reporter didn't do that.
Is it so hard to be intellectually honest? This is just intellectual honesty.
Honestly, you're going soft here, Freeberg. You're getting gaslit by all these people.
I'm not getting gaslit by anyone. I think the guy totally had zero data. By the way, when you're a journalist, you're supposed to report on data and evidence. So he certainly, I think, completely
just replace the name Bob Lee with
Yeah.
Don Carmignani. It's the same story.
Yeah. Well, I think we'll wrap it up there. Interesting discussion, bookended by the moron, the NPC of BBC, getting caught in a lie. This is what happens when you live in an echo chamber. You've already decided the truth before you've actually done any thinking. I just want to take a moment here. The fact that this journalist from BBC wasn't even aware that lying about something without evidence, making a baseless assertion in real time to a guy with one of the biggest fucking brains on earth wouldn't end in him getting assassinated in real time. How detached from reality must you be? How much of an echo chamber do you need to live in? How many yes men and women do you need around you? To think that everybody just, people are saying, okay, that's all the proof I need. You told me that people are saying, and you told me that you saw, no specific examples, but you said you saw it, therefore it must be true. I just can't believe this guy was dumb enough to think that he'd get away with that. Now, in fairness, in my lifetime, I have encountered a few NPCs myself, and they've been similarly treated. However, the difference is, these were just random people. And I'm not a guy with one of the biggest brains on earth, just an average dude, but I'm not one to go making baseless assertions that I can't back up. Of course, nobody's perfect. We all make this mistake. I'm pretty sure that the law of gravity is rock solid, but I haven't actually fact-checked it myself, haven't run the experiments. But the point about this video is that the media does not care about the truth. The media cares about eyeballs, aka advertising revenue. In order to make money selling advertising, media outlets need eyeballs. That's where the old adage, if it bleeds, it leads, comes from. But it doesn't need to be a real thing that's bleeding. You can say something is bleeding and you'll get the exact same fucking effect. I personally have a very simple philosophy and mindset when it comes to knowing what's true and what's not. I assume everyone is wrong about everything, and then I attempt to find out what's true. However, if we do this on literally every single thing, we're going to spend our entire life trying to figure out what's true and what's not, and we'll never get anywhere. So, even I, and everybody, will have to rely upon some experts here and there, consensus opinion. Often that can be a mistake. But here's the way I think about things. There's 3 categories of thing in my brain. There's something I know, because I've actually verified myself. Most people are unwilling to do this on anything, ever. I started trying to figure out how the universe works, went down to the atoms, worked my way up. I can tell you a complete history of the universe and its current state, all the way back to the Big Bang. I can tell you how things work, how stars formed, how all the elements we have on Earth today, where they were formed. Spoiler alert, Carl Sagan put that one rather poetically. We are all made of star stuff. And when I see something in the media, instead of jumping to a conclusion, oh my God, that guy who shot those people must be a white supremacist, I think to myself, that's an interesting narrative that the mainstream media is telling the world. Let me verify or disprove said narrative. Most people are NPCs. I hate to say it, but it's true. Most people get spoon-fed their beliefs and opinions. They don't know what the they're talking about. They can't give specific examples of why they believe what they believe. They can't provide evidence for their assertions. But if enough NPCs in an echo chamber hear each other saying something is true, or hearing that they heard that this is true, therefore it must be true because everyone around me tells me it's true, even though nobody's independently verified this at all. As I tweeted at the time, the final nail was driven into the coffin of the mainstream media this week. Elon Musk dismantling a BBC NPC, getting caught in a lie, caught attempting to convey a false narrative in real time. The entire internet laughing at this guy. It was a tipping point. How can anyone with even half a brain trust mainstream media when this is how they act? The answer is no one with even half a brain can trust them. Maybe if you've got a quarter of a brain, you will still trust them. But even with half a brain, if you're lied to repeatedly, misled, deceived, and manipulated over and over and over and over and over, you can no longer trust these organizations. This is why independent journalists, independent media outlets are absolutely slaying it. This All-In podcast is a great example. Millions of people listen to this weekly now, mostly on podcasts, a little bit on YouTube as well. These guys are doing the same kind of ratings as a major show on a major television network. The difference is they have nuanced discussion. They're intellectually honest. They're trying their best. They're not trying to paint the one true narrative. And they generally have evidence to back up their assertions. As I tweeted earlier this week, if you don't think for yourself, someone else is bound to do it for you. One final thing, a little bit of an Easter egg, highly relevant to today's video. Just thought I'd show you something that's been in every goddamn one of my videos since day one. As always, in this video, I'm just sharing my thinking process and reasoning. Keep using your own brain. Don't be a sheep. So, ladies and gentlemen, that's the message of today's video. Keep using your own brain. Don't be a sheep. Speaking of using one's brain, and no jokes, I'm being super serious here, guys. Athletic Greens AG1, which I've now been taking for over 2 years, has been extremely helpful in allowing me to use my brain and body a little more. A couple of years ago, I was so low energy, I was dying, I thought I was getting old. Turns out I just wasn't giving my body everything it needed to feel and perform its best. Last couple of years, I've been on a crazy health journey, trying to get my energy up, sleep better, feel better, perform better, improve my exercise capacity, my ability to recover. And Athletic Greens AG1 is not the only thing I'm doing, but I tell you what, far and away, it is the best bang for buck. I take this stuff every day in the morning, one scoop once a day, every day. And the biggest effect I've personally found is a massive increase in energy. If you think back to a time recently where you're extremely exhausted, the last thing you wanted to do was move or do anything else that would use energy, including your brain. I'm sure some of you relate. After a long, hard day of work, come home, dead tired, don't want to think, don't want to do anything. You just want to enter a vegetative state. Now, everyone has different priorities in life, but to me, I want to live as long as possible, as healthy as possible, and I want to feel and perform my best along the way. There remain many skeptics watching this channel, and it's totally fine. You are welcome to be a skeptic, but I'm just telling you my personal experience. When I first started taking Athletic Greens AG1, within a few weeks, I felt a massive change. No more afternoon fatigue. I started telling friends and family. And the reason is because of the profound impact that this had on me. Athletic Greens AG1 is packed full of 75 high-quality vitamins and minerals and whole food source nutrients. Not only that, but it promotes gut health because it has digestive enzymes, plus prebiotics and probiotics, and also it's full of adaptogens to help you deal with stress. And if you head to athleticgreens.com/SMR or use the link in the pinned comment, you get a 1-year free supply of vitamin D3 and K2. It's worth trying. And I am being super serious when I say more energy will encourage you to be more likely to actually use your brain. I can remember exactly what it felt like a couple of years ago when I was fading in the afternoon. The last thing I wanted to do was think. It was hard work just getting through the day. I was putting things off, procrastinating. Why? Didn't have the energy. I didn't want to use my brain. I'm like, nah, I'm done. You can hear me talking about this issue on Patreon going back a couple of years, explaining how I didn't have enough energy. I had a tiny cup, really struggling. Things were draining me enormously. You can also see me literally 2 years ago promoting Athletic Greens AG1 on Patreon to my subscribers who are asking about health hacks, supplements, and so on. I said I swore by that stuff back then, and I wasn't being paid to say so. If you want to fact check me, I believe it was Q&A number 94, maybe 96, 97, somewhere in that vicinity. By now, most of you will have seen the testimonials. Many viewers of this channel, leaving comments, sending DMs, sharing their experience. Common themes include a boost in energy, boost in mood, increased work capacity, exercise capacity, an increase in ambition, drive, motivation, and again, this is all just stemming, I believe, from an increase in energy. So please, I implore you, try Athletic Greens AG1. Just try it for a month, see how you feel. If you don't like it, get your money back. That's what the 9-day money back guarantee is for. The hardest thing, I think, in trying to encourage some of you guys and girls to try Athletic Greens AG1 is that I know I'm speaking to some NPCs who are so brainwashed that they don't think there's anything out there that could possibly improve their energy, their health, their overall mood, their cognition. They think they get everything they could possibly need just from their diet. And I'm afraid to tell you, it's not true. You'll get everything you need to exist and to survive. But if you really want to optimize how you feel and perform, you will need to supplement. These are what's known as the facts. So, what are you waiting for? Head to athleticgreens.com/SMR or click the link in the pinned comment. And as I mentioned, I have recently posted the most important video I've ever recorded exclusively on Patreon. It's not about investing. It's not about Tesla. It's far more important than any of those subjects. And I really do wish I could post it here on YouTube, but given the insane censorship policies of these motherfuckers, yes, I'm talking to you, YouTube. I know there's a human being manually reviewing every single one of my videos. Not everybody's happy with you guys deciding what we're allowed to talk about, which ideas and opinions we can freely share, and which are hateful content. And until YouTube removes its head from its collective ass, I have no choice but to post this privately. If you're interested, check it out. If you're not a member, you can join. I don't need the money. You don't need to sign up. You don't have to watch the video. I'm just telling you, it is the most important video I've ever posted, and I have no choice but to post it privately on Patreon, at least for now. So, if you're interested, I'll see you over on Patreon. Love ya.